Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for attending this afternoon for the presentation and the conversation that we are going to hold with our dear friend Juan Cruz. You all know him already. And he is going to have a discussion with the Nobel Prize winner Orhan Pamuk. We have published 15 of his novels. He is a great admirer of Spain. He comes to Spain very often. And I think that I can say that love that he has for this country is reciprocal, because as you can see, and as we have seen in Barcelona as well a few days ago, everybody attends massively your presentations. And so I would like to thank Fundación Telefónica for welcoming us in this excellent venue. And I'm going to turn the floor over to the two guest speakers. At the end of this conference, he will be signing books, and I don't know if we will have time to have Q&A, questions and answers with him, but that I leave to the interviewer. Thank you.
Yeah. I put your book here. No? And this in the back.
Oh, the black book is also there. Yes, you published that many years ago.
Many years ago. Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is for me an honor and a privilege to be here and to share this afternoon with all of you and with Orhan Pamuk. He is a very emotional and exciting writer. His emotions come from his daily look over people, over all sorts of people. The people that he meets on the street, the people that surround him in his books, from Anna Karenina to the last character that might inhabit his imagination. And it is not just in literature, but it is also in his day-to-day. There is an ambition, a thorough ambition that he holds, and that leads him to search for the human soul. And that is prior to writing, and it turns his books into very rare soul objects. It is not common. He is not a common writer. He is not a normal, a usual writer. Don't look ever in him a reference to some cliches. He is always dealing with what stems from the human soul. For me, as a writer and as a person that has worked with book for most of my life, the admiration that I cherish is really a unique one, because it is a rare occasion and a rare writer, and I'm glad that you all share the privilege of being able to meet him.
Humbled and flattered by your sweet words, and I'm also happy to hear that the more you research, the more you explore the possibilities of realism, actually you go into spirit. You go into the what is unsaid, and with that I mean the sentiment, the mood. This is what I care about, while you have to catch it with surfaces, with realism, but then good fiction implies spirit. Yes, I'm very happy about what you said. Thank you.
Esta novela.
This novel, Orhan, contains many metaphors. The well itself we in the Canary Islands we say pozo, not pozo, but the well itself has embedded into itself all metaphors. It may refer not just to the human life, also to the origin and the source of human life, the fear, the origin, the water, the womb, the mother, the father. How did it emerge? How did you come up with that idea, which is so common and so normal, but which gives really a sense of holiness to that book?
That compared to Northern Europe or northern countries, in South, in say Spain, or in Anatolia, in Turkey, finding water is important. You may have a land, but if you don't have water, then it doesn't mean anything. Finding water in a barren land or finding water in your land suddenly changes everything. Once you have water, then there you will have civilization. And especially the more you go south, the more finding water and wells are overabundance of well. The best example being that Joseph and his brothers are both in Bible and in Quran. And also Turkish is full of metaphors about wells. The best one is, and I use this more than once, is that there's a Turkish saying, iğneyle kuyu kazmak, which is more or less digging a well with a needle, implying patience. And I refer to writing a book is also digging a well with a needle.
De hecho, hay momentos.
In fact, there are times in your books, there are moments in your book where you summon, so to speak, as a narrator, a character that suddenly knows all metaphors that may exist in the imagination of the guy, the fear, the mother and the father, and finally the fear of killing the father.
In that sense are postmodern characters. They have fallen in a situation and they are also partly aware of the history or literary history of that situation. That is, the book has two sides. You ask about wells. In 1988, I was trying to finish my black book in Istanbul, and then in the land next to me, they were, just like in the book, a middle-aged master well digger and his disciple or assistant or whatever you call this person were digging a well. I was writing my book, they were digging this well. And after a while they said, sir, can we have some electricity? Can we have some water? Sort of a friendship or a relation developed. And then before they leave, it took 3 weeks for them to find water. We have conversations and I ask the master well digger, tell me stories, tell me about your life. And I do that. I have a huge bank of interviews at home.
Yeah, but in that sense, the life during the days continues in the book, in the sense that they were very angry during the day working, and when the day ends, they were talking about something of literature.
But first, what stayed with me, what triggered this book is, during the day, the well digger was shouting, screaming, intimidating, dominating, crushing, finishing off the boy. And at night, as they had enjoyed their food, the stew they put on, and they had a portable TV, my God, now the well digger was so kind, so passionate, so compassionate, so tender to the boy, which confused me. And I thought, man, I thought that a sort of a father and son figure. The first thing that stayed with me, I never had a father like that who crushed me. Thank God. I had a father, absent father with my brother, who never scolded us, who never dominated us. But on the other hand, this compassionate father, this close friend-like father was also absent. So I begin to think about fathers and sons, which brought me to Oedipus Rex and Rustam and Suhrab.
And there is something in that sequence, day, night, that when the night is coming, there is something like a landscape of peace.
Yes.
No? The peace comes, and somebody could think that tomorrow the night will go.
Every day is like a war, a lot of clash and drama, and then they take a break. And a good example that suggests is occasionally the well-digger says, I'll go down to village to buy a cigarette.
Yeah.
That's peace now.
And to know the woman of the red hair. But now we go to the woman of the red hair. But let me to read to the audience and yourself something you write at the end of the El Libro Negro. If you were writing the prologue of the...
Writing what?
The prologue.
Prologue, yes. Mm-hmm.
Of this
yes.
book. Porque nada puede...
Because nothing can be as surprising as life itself. Except writing. Except writing. Yes, of course. Except writing. The only consolation.
As lines of Black Book. So.
Lo que quiero es.
What I want is to signify, to state that in the book itself, in your present book, what you present from the first moment for that young guy is the life. The father abandons the house. He wants to search for a life that brings him, puts him in equal terms with the father, and that decision leads him to work with a man that really digs wells. The well summons fear. The mother is the safest place that he has in life at that point in time, tells him, don't go, and never go down into the well. All those are advices, are tips of real mothers.
In my childhood, not in central Istanbul, we had a summer place where there was no municipality, no government water system, that we also had a well, and we also had a system that water comes from the roof of. But as my cousins, my brother played around in the big garden, I always, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother was always, don't go, don't go, and sending people, don't get close to well. Although the well at that time was already locked with a rusty lock, that it was almost impossible to open, that it was the most dangerous place, like Auschwitz, or horrible place that you don't want, that everyone, the upper classes or grandmothers, grandfathers, the superiors, don't get close to that. While, as in all stories, that the more there is an anxiety about, please don't get close to it, and of course, children want to get close to it. And this happens, that happens one day, that rusty lock is opened, and then and you see downstairs lizards and spiders are coming out, and also a smell, humid, warm smell comes. More or less, these are the autobiographical details of wells of my childhood.
There is a description of those things that come out of the well,
Yes.
that it reminds me the minuciosity of el Museo de la Inocencia.
Okay. Then there are also, kuyu in Turkish is used in so many metaphors. It is that you drop things into a well, or you say, I'm going to lock you in a door and throw the key to the well, meaning it's finished, that nothing can get out of it. As I was writing this book, or just before I began writing the book, though I saw the well digger and the disciple 25 years ago, I decided to write this book 4 years ago. I begin to search, and that's my method of working, old well diggers. And in fact, I found a well digger very proud of fixing the old wells of Istanbul, and especially he was proud to be invited to big mosques well, and he told me every big mosque had a well. Some of them had 2. I fixed them, he said proudly, and then begin telling me things that he had found at the bottom of well. Guns, all sorts of old Byzantium money, and the things you find in the depths of wells are also like suppressed things. I'm now talking Freudian language, that you want to forget about something, just throw it in a well. So
I'm a proud son of a dual expert, my father, because in the south of the Canary Islands there was no water, and he was digging wells too. And my first impression always was fear.
Yes.
I had fear about him, and of myself going there too. But I read this enumeration. Aquella arena
That dusty sand contained membrane bits of animal fur, scales of mother pearl, as the ones I played around with when I was a child, the same color of my skin, translucent shells, strange rocky fragments of the size of an egg, and a stone as light that would float in a pond.
If you're digging a well, and if you come across a land that is light-colored and sandy, that's bad. The more you approach, now that I wrote a novel and I'm a sort of an amateur expert on the subject, the more the land gets darker, that you're approaching water, the more the dark and humid the land gets, it's time that you are approaching water. The old master well diggers told me before I wrote the story.
I was suffering for the boy during a time, but then I was suffering for the master, because the master couldn't find water. There was somebody every day or every week saying, I'm not going to give you more money. You are not going to find water. You had the same fear that the man couldn't get water?
In the end, it's the man assumes almost shamanistic powers, because the well digger, if he finds water, suddenly it changes your life. If you find water in a barren land, there will be a house, there will be water, there will be a farming, there will be a city there, or it will be all empty. In my part of the world, I'm sure it's like that in Canary Islands too. The well diggers assume almost shamanistic sheikh-like powers because they're so important, because you need water that much. And the stories of my master well digger is also related to that. He knows that But the irony of my story is that we are in mid-1980s and this whole old-fashioned craft is about to end. What Turks call artisan cars are about to be developed. What they do in 3 weeks now, they were about to do in 3 hours.
You situate the story at the same time you were finishing the Black Book.
Yes.
How it was your life then? How did you meet with all those people? The man who was selling botza.
But they're different. They're different
Yeah,
times.
but how you go to those people?
Okay, that's another-
improbable
okay.
protagonists of novels.
Okay, at the beginning, I was not called professional, naive. Now I'm thinking, my first novel, Cevdet Bey and his son, the main body of the book takes place in 1930s. Just the other day I thought about it. And it's partly about development of Turkish middle classes, upper middle classes, Turkish as a nation, and development of, and there is some chapters about making railroads, and my grandfather made railroads. And when I was 23, when I began writing my first book, then I found old people, my grandfather's friends, who were civil engineers and teaching at the university, and they were all retired. Now, the other day, I thought the people I interviewed for my first novel, if they were to be alive today, they would be 120 years old. Then I said, thank God I did these interviews. All that culture vanished. But I did these interviews, and with the help of my father, found these people who were not my father's, my grandfather's friends, and did interview. So, but at that time, I was clumsy and timid. But now I do a lot of interviews, say the Boza, and I like it. And I'm now more professional, more perhaps relaxed. I'll tell you how I do an interview with a rice and chicken seller in Istanbul. You go, and in fact, this detail is in that book. So you buy it, you begin eating it. So a good street food seller should talk to you, to entertain you, because so that you come next day, you come again. So I ask questions. And the funniest, this is in my previous novel, Strangers in My Mind. I say, where do you buy this rice from? He tells me. I buy the rice from here, I buy the chicken from here, and how do you cook? And I cook this like this, and I add this, and how do you do this? And I do this, and I do this, and how do you wash this? And how do you wash the dishes? Oh, and then he tells me, I do this, I do that, and what about the dishes? Oh, he says, my wife washes the dishes. Actually, my wife buys the chicken. Actually, my wife buys the rice. Actually, she is cooking. And you understand, she is doing everything, but
They have to go to me too.
Yes, they have to go to me too. And that's how I become a feminist.
Good. But tell me, Orhan, that makes you a journalist too.
Yes, good question. Especially in Strangers in My Mind, and also my cynical friends. Orhan, you are now getting an anthropologist and sociologist. What is this? And my answer, I'm getting angry to them too. Well, this is supposed to be a realist novel that we were supposed to write in 1970s.
Yeah.
And I wrote it in 2010. Yes, and I'm worried about that, but I can't help it, I do it. The more I research, the more I think the Kafka in me, the imaginative Edgar Allan Poe in me, should take over and turn it around.
But that goes also to you as a reader, because you wanted even to know what book is reading Anna Karenina. And you pose that to a question.
Yes,
in
a naive and sentimental.
Yes.
And I asked this to Harvard professors. No one knew. One guy said, in Anna Karenina, in the train scene, Anna has a book in her hand. Then famous Anna Karenina. Then I was thinking, Tolstoy liked Trollope, this British author. So, and coincidentally, when I was delivering those lectures at Harvard University, I asked the Russian professors, so in Anna Karenina, she is reading a book. Which book is she reading? And they said, oh, don't ask me. I'm a 20th century modern literature.
Maybe she was reading Anna Karenina.
Yes.
But Orhan, the book begins with a very simple sentence that is autobiography. Yo, en realidad...
to be honest, I wanted to be a writer.
It's a way of catching the reader. Now, so they say, autobiographical or not? They're confused. So I'm playing with the reader.
And the boy begins meeting somebody who in the day is a very rude man, doing rude work, going down, digging without any profit. And in the night, he tells stories, like Sherazade, like our mothers, or our grandmothers.
Like Arabian Nights, or 1001 Night. And Arabian Nights are full of wells.
And then you find there the second half of the metaphor. Fear, loneliness, no father, and then fantasy, to look for.
Also, all these sentiments, fear, loneliness, I think these are modern sentiments. The book is also about, the book wants to maybe contrast individuality with authoritarianism, belonging to a group, to individuality. The book also has another aspect that as I was writing, My Name is Red, I read a lot of old classical Turkish, Persian, Ottoman stories, and as I was reading them, especially Firdevsi's Shahname, one story was almost a mirror, symmetrical mirror image of Sophocles' Oedipus Rex. The only difference was, this time, it's not the son killing the father, but the father killing the son. And that stayed with me. For a while, I thought of writing a literary essay comparing Sophocles' Oedipus Rex to Firdevsi's Rustam and Sohrab. Almost the same story. Mothers are crying all the time. Fathers and sons are killing each other, also trying to run away from fate. But I thought maybe I'll write this novel, intertwine it with the relationship between a master well-digger and his disciple.
Those coincidence, the boy wants to be a writer, then the literature comes to him, makes the boy later, in the second half of the novel, to try to find all over the world aspects, pictorics, photographics, or literary even, of those metaphors, the death of the father, the killing of the father. This is something that is always in the legends and also in the reality. When you wrote those circumstances, you feel maybe I'm telling something that is too rude to be read?
I definitely wanted to write a short novel. I sometimes feel that everyone says, your novels are too long, Orhan. And I have two kind of reactions to that. Some of my readers are happy about that, and some of them and I see this as a challenge, there is a self-imposed desire to write a short, fast-moving, philosophical novel. This is the beginning of, if you ask me, this is the beginning of this novel. Don't forget that before that, I wrote A Strangeness in My Mind, which took me 6 years to write. And when I said after that to my friends, to my editor, now I have another book. Everyone, what? And I said, don't worry, it's a short book.
It's a short book. No, when he discovers night, the boy discovers night, the landscape of the night, there is emerged a woman with the red hair. Mm-hmm. And this is a symbolic also in some of your books, the red. I wonder how that came to you, because then it's decisive for the novel, not only because of the red hair, but because of the beautiful, the beauty, the ideal of beauty.
Okay, but there is not much, really, not much color symbolism in her red hair, but it is as simple as this, that in, say, English literature, from Shakespeare to Sylvia Plath, red-haired is associated with red-haired woman with angry, uncontrollable, mysterious, forceful woman who destroy things. More or less the same in my part of the world, but and since there's not much genuine red-haired woman in the more you go south, most of the red-haired women in my part of the world have dyed hair, and that's why actresses, women with strong character, women who don't want to look like the traditional, hate the role of the traditional woman, do it. And it's also means or has a connotation of maybe you can flirt with her, have sex with her because she is more westernized and free, so forth and so on. My question is, if the prejudices of people in my part of the world, that they look at the red-haired woman as she may have a light virtue, why do they dye their hair reds? There is no answer to that, of course, because they want to be, they're challenging the ideology, they're challenging the community, they have strength, they want to be red-haired, and they want the difference. In fact, the book has 3 parts. In the 3rd part, when the red-haired woman is speaking, there's a story she tells that it's a choice. I asked my woman friends, I'm writing and I asked a red-haired woman friend, tell me about a story about red hair, and she told me that story.
I will not touch the 2nd and 3rd part of the book for the benefit of readers, because they want to be as patient as you are writing. But I'm going to refer to a very central question or description in your book. Is when he finally commits happiness with the red hair woman.
Maybe I'll tell. I'm not shy about that. They have sex, right?
They have sex. Yes, I wanted you to say that. You are the hard words.
But funny thing,
the porno star.
But the funny thing that I'm putting it like the well-digger in a rough language. But it's interesting that the book is published in America, and some of the readers said, well, the boy is not even 18, and this is not nice.
That will come here. That will come here, don't worry. But at that moment, the description you do about the night, the after night, reminds me a very dramatic sentence in L'étranger d'Albert Camus, when he says, and then I sounded, I was knocking in the door of the disgrace.
I see. Mm-hmm.
Comprendí entonces que había...
I understood then that I have broken the harmony of the day, the exceptional silence of a beach where I had been happy. I realized that I had knocked at the doors of disgrace. And the protagonist, the main character of your book, says, suddenly the world was keeping such a profound silence as the deep wells one. My legs were shaking.
Actually, as obvious that I'm better in my novels than in my interviews. In my interviews, I say they have sex, and in the book, I have this poetry.
Has escrito...
You've written the book of a human being, but above all, of a writer that is a human being. While you were writing it, do you realize that there is something in you like a call to compassion? And do you realize, do you notice that while you write there is a passion in you, a passion to be sympathetic?
As I get older, I believe the act of writing is less promoting ideas, more creating situations that you want to understand everyone. And the more you want to understand everyone, the more ideology, propaganda, the more less forceful ideas you have. But on the other hand, beauty of writing novels is that you give, you honor other people's point of view and do it in a delicate way that the totality is felt. That the more I write novels, the more I think that my job is to hear other people's voices and compose and put them in such a way that the book is more than these people's voices. When they meet with the red-haired woman, I also describe the night silence, or before that, the stars and this. And when I do that, I know that I am also communicating, and this is the beauty of literature, that you talk about stars, or you talk about how the night looks. Some readers say, I don't like the descriptive passages, what's happening, let's go to action. But of course, that once you manage the action in such a way that the whole world begins to talk about the sentiments of the action, not the characters. Mm-hmm.
That points out to the feeling of music.
Yes, but what is the question?
The question is that you say in El Libro Negro,
the Black Book,
libros,
in certain books there are some pages that seem to register with our minds in such a way that we are unable to forget them. More than because of the skill of the author, it is because the story seems to flow by itself as it had been written by itself. That is the case of this book, isn't it? It seems to have been written by the book itself, that you have just been a means, an instrument. And I wrote as a question the following: is it the writing of pain, the writing of happiness, of joy, and of patience? That is your type of writing, my description.
In the end, it's getting delicate details about people that would suggest more than these realistic details. That, of course, I rewrite, take out passages, edit out, rewrite. Of course, the aim of a perfect book, the perfect book, as you suggested, is a book that is written, gives you a sense that is written by itself. In that, I always want to be a naive writer. That naive writer, according to Schiller, and he was jealous of Goethe, who was, as if he's possessed by God, is speaking and God is speaking through him. But I'm a sentimental writer who is, now that I realize God is not speaking through me, but let me think, if he were to be speaking from my text, what would he be telling? More or less, my novels, my books, my texts are the desire to write perfect books, but it's very hard. You have to try again. It's never that it unfolds by itself.
Your literature is addictive.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
When you write, you read a book, when I read a book of yours, at the beginning I said, this is about me. And you are a Turkish, somebody from Istanbul, living beside the Bosphorus. Why your books are so addictive, so personal for everybody?
I don't want to explain this. Once you try to explain this, you are an idiot narcissist.
Then I will tell you. Es como
It is as if even if you were writing about a alcohol seller or about an obsessed, you are always talking about me. Perhaps I'm that salesman or an obsessed lover. But I would like to finish with something.
Exactamente.
Yes. I am just going to read a few lines that belong to one of your books. It is yours, not mine, but it defines, in my opinion, what you achieve with your books. And then you will have a quarter of an hour for questions and answers. Because if you ask questions, you can get to Istanbul. If I had become a writer, I would have liked to compose something such as this monumental work and timeless one, where that encompasses everything, where every detail is identified, that sometimes was able to get emotional or to become sad with its humanity, and some other times I was in awe. Does that happen to you as well when you read?
I confess that I am now, as I get older, read less literature, more technical historical books. Perhaps because I've been preparing myself to write, taking notes for many books. As life gets shorter, I have many projects, many books that I want to write. In the end, literature or literary communication is about that delicate moment when the writer, and I see myself more as a craftsman rather than an artist. You work to achieve an effect. The beauty of it is that you also remember how I was reading, say, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Proust, Thomas Mann. These are my greatest novelists. In the end, when you finish a novel, what you aim at, this kind of intuition, this kind of what you refer to as spiritual writing. I don't know whether I manage it, but your kind words make me think that maybe I'm moving some hearts.
Your next book, you have to say at the beginning, I am a writer now.
Yes.
I am very happy that Random House asked me, especially my friend Claudio, to interview you in public, and Eva Cuenca has been very nice to command this. I'm so happy to talk about the very important writer of our times.
Thank you so much.
Who writes about fear and love at the same time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And now, ahora las preguntas.
And now, questions and answers. Please be better and shorter than me, please.
Sí, hola.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your talk, both to Juan and to Orhan. What's in the deep well? Perhaps a red-haired woman? What is there in the bottom of the well?
In the bottom of the well, they find some water at the end or not. But at the bottom of the well, all the old well diggers of Istanbul, there are old Byzantium coins, daggers, things that people want to get rid of it, if you're asking this question realistically. Or again, in old wells, there is gas, poisonous gas, and if you go down to the old well, there will be gas, if you're talking realistically. At the bottom of the well, there are old stories from Joseph and his brothers to Arabian Nights. My part of the world is made up of wells and old stories.
Gracias.
There's one there. Just wait for the mic, please. Good afternoon. The novel that you have written deals with at least one or two main foundational myths of two different cultures. One of the Western ones, which is the myth of Oedipus, and the other one that I read, the Persian one of the Book of Kings. The child kills the father, and the other way around in the other one. So those are foundational legends in the countries of origin. My question is, what were your difficulties as a modern writer in such a philosophical novel of ideas? What was the difficulty to work with those ideas that have already been dealt with by many people throughout the years?
A good question, in the sense that that the novel wants to do exactly what you referred to, is comparing these old myths and also saying that these myths are still around. Also, not to make, just to clarify that these old stories are not forgotten, or as you said, foundational myths, that both stories, that is Sophocles' Oedipus Rex and Firdevsi's Book of Kings, Shahnameh, are Penguin classics. When I say that, the people are relieved. Oh, they are not that obscure. The problem with philosophical or novel of ideas is that it's hard to intertwine, connect the myth with the reality. You have to go fast. And I think the writer who manages that best, that is, talks about essential foundational myths like that, and also satisfies our standards of realism is Dostoevsky. In Dostoevsky, the movement from big ideas, God, humanity, community, originality, jealousy, everything, uniqueness, whatever, and all these Dostoevskian themes, it goes to realism, money, struggling, very petty details, it goes to the other side, again, big ideas. Actually, the art of the novel is based on the writer's talents of making this pendulum go faster and faster from the particular, very unique, realistic thing, a glass of boza, a glass of some very palpable, a clock, a plastic bottle, to the idea of God, to the big ideals of solidarity, friendship, individuality, freedom, originality, weight of history, and our freedom. This is what a novel should do, actually. The novels are, for me, the religion of secular life, that big ideas, philosophy, religion are always there. But the more modern we get, the more we are lost in big cities. We are confused about the meaning of these big ideas and our petty details of life. If there is any moral or obligation for a novelist, it is the connection between this thing and the high-floating big ideas that I always struggle to connect.
¿Alguna mano levantada?
Any other questions? There's one there.
Hay una mujer.
There's a red-haired woman there.
Pero es muy importante. Ella es la responsable del.
But she is very important. She is in charge of the High Festival in Segovia. A very important woman. An activist, a cultural activist.
Hi, I have a question regarding, well, you've talked about the writer as a crafter in a way, because of all the work you have to put in. And then you mentioned this connection between the real world and the metaphysical world, if you want, the big things in life. But when you think about your work, did you ever expect to put all these things together and that these things will ever give you a Nobel Prize in your career?
Okay, I understand your question. A Nobel Prize, at the beginning of my literary career, is a sort of a metaphor for success. Just like a Turkish father, traditional father would tell to his son, oh, one day you'll be a pasha, or one day you'll be the president. And we writers tell each other, or think, oh, one day you will win the Nobel Prize. It's almost a cliche. So, like all authors, maybe I have thought about this, but it's an unreachable thing. But then, the older I get, the more people begin to talk about it. But in the end, no one writes for a Nobel Prize. Everyone writes for, my aim when I started writing was to have success in such a way that I continue writing. It was Ernest Hemingway who once said, some of my writers' friends cannot write well. A, either they don't have any success, or B, they have too much success. I think a good way of continue to write is someplace in between, and that's what I prepared myself for.
That's good. Más?
Any other questions? They are quite shy, aren't they? Orhan, I would like to ask you a question. Do you travel all over the world? you ask and you interview many people. You take lots of photos with your mobile phone. From all the things that you have seen in these last few days in Barcelona and Madrid, what has moved you? What has gotten your interest? What has seemed to you closer?
Also talking with my partner, unfortunately, I'll tell the truth, that Turkey is politically bad, repressive situation. And I, for 10 years, I'm living with a bodyguard. I am not at the middle of that bad situation, thank God, in Turkey. But I would have preferred to live in a leisurely European country where, or any country where politics is better. Politics, free speech is almost disappearing in Turkey, and that gives you such a bad feeling. Also, lots of my friends, let's call them intellectual friends, are depressed about the political situation in Turkey. And perhaps now we have really enjoyed, we are lucky, there was sun in Barcelona and everyone was out in the streets and everyone looked, maybe because I'm coming from politically troubled country, everyone looked happy, or that's what I thought. And I also felt that, and perhaps I wanted that relaxed, sunny happiness also in politics of Turkey. That's what I observed here. Maybe, and everyone, when I say that, wow, we have a Catalonian, what do you mean? But 10 people are in jail, they tell me, or 20 people are in jail, they tell me, and 50,000 people are in jail in Turkey.
Orhan, when you come to Madrid, is going to the Museo del Prado.
Yes, I was there this afternoon.
And what have you seen there? Why you go again to the Museo del Prado?
Okay. This time, of course, first of all, I like the museumness of museum, that you go to a museum and then there is a quality of being a museum. I like that. I also have a museum that I'm managing in a way, Museum of Innocence. The second, this time, I like Bosch. I don't know how to, am I pronouncing him right?
El Bosco.
El Bosco. El Bosco is such a great person.
He's a novelist.
He's a novelist, you know. You want to be like El Bosco. You want to have ideas like him. And you look at it and look at it and look at it. These people flying in the sky with their wings, with, next to insects.
With diamonds.
Yes. And so... a painter like El Bosco speaks to your eyes without an intellect, and that is so beautiful, that there is a childlike feeling looking at these paintings. And also, you also think, my God, almost this El Bosco was doing, I thought about this afternoon, these paintings, where the same time, the painters in My Name is Red were doing that. They are the same years. And I thought about all this, that El Bosco was doing those very delicate, very surprising. His imagination, it's like an ocean. There is no end to it. And I was thinking of all that. And it's so nice to to be here, to look at these things and to think about art, literature, moving people's hearts, being here, being alive and looking at these. And this is also related to, I'm lucky, the sun in Barcelona, the good afternoon I enjoyed here in Madrid.
I met you many years ago, more years for me than for you. And you are happier and happier.
Thank you.
You are happier now than then. It's because you work with Claudio López La Madrid?
Yes, I am, lots of my friends, as they get older, get a bit depressed, not because of politics or this or that, because maybe this is how life is. But I have so many projects. Really, if I go to a museum and look at pictures, then even in my most depressive day, my mood immediately changes in a good museum, and Prado is such a good museum, and the collection is so great.
¿Alguna pregunta se les ocurrió?
Any questions? And this is the last question.
Once I read a book and it changed my whole life. This is the very beginning of the new life. Which book you read and changed your whole life, Orhan?
This is the most popular question that I've been asked after I published The New Life. In fact, I had so many Turkish friends, and they were leftist friends, secular friends. They would have some Marxist leftist books that have changed their lives. In fact, the logic of that book is such that there shouldn't be such a powerful book. That I don't want that kind of centers in our lives. If, in fact, in my youth, I was exposed to such a book, and I describe that book as a sort of light coming out of the book, then I would be a bit confused, would be happy, follow the light a bit, but would go to another book that would take the light off that book and find me in another way. In many, many ways, I am radical only in literature. I don't want to be too radical in ideas. I only want to be radical in literature. And once you decide about that, the books that have changed my life are perhaps the books that I wrote.
Gracias.
Thank you.